Krishna Krishna We continue reading from BHagavad Gita cities, chapter 12, verse 20. Devotional service, chapter 12. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Continue reading from BHagavad Gita cities by His Divine Grace HG Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Chapter 12, Devotional Service, verse 20. Yetu dharmam vritam itam yato tam paripashate shadadanamat parama bhaktaste tivame priya yetu dharmam vritam hitam yato tam paripashate shadadanamat parama bhaktaste tivame priya yetu dharmam rikamitam yatoktam paripashate shadadanamat parama Bhaktaste Tivame Priya. Hetu Dharmamritamidam Yatoktam Paripashate Shadadanam Parama Bhaktaste Tivame Priya. Yetu Dharmamritamidam Yatoktam Paripashate Sadadanamat Parama Bhaktaste Tivame Priya. Yetu Dharmamritam idam
Yatoktam Paripashate Sadadanamat Parama Bhaktaste Tivame Priya.
Bhaktaste Tivame Priya.
Yetu dharmamritam idam
Yetu Dharmamritam idam
Yatoktam prayupasate
Yatoktam Paripashate
Sadadanamat parama
Sadadanamat Parama
Bhaktaste tivame priya.
Bhaktaste Tivame Priya.
Yute dharmanam mritam idam
Yetu Dharmamritam idam
Yatoktam paripasate
Yatoktam Paripashate
Sardadanamat param
Sadadanamat Parama
Bhaktaste mi priya.
Bhaktaste Tivame Priya. Yetu Dharmamritam idam Yatoktam Paripashate Sadadanamat Parama Bhaktaste Tivame Priya. Those who to but Dharma of religion, Amritam nectar, Idam this, Yatha as, Uktam said, Pariyupasate completely engaged, Shadadana with faith, Matparamaha taking me, the Supreme Lord as everything. Bhakta devotees, they, Ativa, very, very, may to me, Priya, dear. Translation and purport of His Divine Grace, HG Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Jai Shri Prabhupada. Those who follow this perishable path of devotional service and who completely engage themselves with faith, making me the supreme goal, are very, very dear to me. Let us repeat. Those who follow this imperishable path of devotional service and who completely engage themselves with faith, making me the supreme goal, are very, very dear to me. Purport. In this chapter, from verse 2 through the end, from Maya Avesha Mano Yemam, fixing the mind on me, through Yetu Dharmamritam Idam, this religion of eternal engagement. The Supreme Lord has explained the processes of transcendental service for approaching Him. Such processes are very dear to the Lord, and He accepts a person engaged in them. The question of who is better, one who is engaged in the path of impersonal Brahman, or one who is engaged in the personal service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, was raised by Arjuna. And the Lord replied to him so explicitly that there is no doubt that devotional service to the personality of Godhead is the best of all processes of spiritual realization. In other words, in this chapter it is decided that through good association one develops attachment for pure devotional service and thereby accepts a bona fide spiritual master, and from him begins to hear and chant and observe the regulative principles of devotional service with faith, attachment, and devotion, and thus becomes engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord. This path is recommended in this chapter. Therefore, there is no doubt that devotional service is the only absolute path for realization. For the attachment of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the personal conception of the Supreme Absolute Truth, as described in this chapter, is recommended only up to the time one surrenders himself for self-realization. In other words, as long as one does not have the chance to associate with a pure devotee, the impersonal conception may be beneficial. In the impersonal conception of the Absolute Truth, one works without fruitive result, meditates and cultivates knowledge to understand the spirit and matter. This is necessary as long as one is not in the association of a pure devotee. Fortunately, if one develops directly a desire to engage in Krishna consciousness in pure devotional service, he does not need to undergo step-by-step improvements in spiritual realization. Devotional service, as described in the middle 6 chapters of BHagavad Gita, is more congenial. One need not bother about materials to keep body and soul together, because by the grace of the Lord, everything is carried out automatically. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 3rd chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of devotional service. Om Abhyan Tigram Dasya Tenadana Salakaya Chaksur Om Niritam Dena Tasmai Sigarure Nama Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Dena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swan Patantikam Vachakalpa Tarvavasya Krita Sindhir Gacha Pakitalam Pavadevyo Vaisnavevyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishna Yutale Srimate Tava Krishna Kriswanti Namane Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishna Yutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Devi Vishesha Sundravadi Paschatya Vishatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I will read again the translation. Those who follow this imperishable path of devotional service and who completely engage themselves with faith, making me the supreme goal, are very, very dear to me. So this verse is most important in this chapter. It tells us the Lord Krishna is telling us the direct process of how to attain Him. And He used the word very, very dear to me. uh, three verses before this, he also mentioned the different paths toward devotional service, and he just said, such practitioner or transcendentalist is very dear to me. Only one very, very dear to me. Here he used very, very dear to me. So in this chapter, Lord Krishna described two paths of transcendentalism. One is impersonalism, and one is personalist. So the impersonal, Krishna described that the personal path towards him is attained after many, many births. It is troublesome and it is tedious. So the impersonalist way of realizing God is an indirect process, because one is trying to learn or understand the impersonal feature of God, which is present in the Brahma Jyoti. The Brahma Jyoti is the light coming from the body of the Supreme Lord, the light. So some transcendentalists, they consider God as light. So they want to merge with the light. And Srila Prabhupada termed this as spiritual suicide. When you want to merge, or the Sarupya Mukti, you want to merge with the body of Krishna, there's no element of servitude. There's no element of reciprocation, loving reciprocation, because one considers God as impersonal. So in the other side, the personal feature of God is Bhagavan. So Krishna can be realized through three. He can be realized in three aspects. The first is the Brahma Jyoti, or the light coming from Krishna, or the Brahma, the all-pervading Brahma. Second is his expansion as Vishnu form, which resides in our heart, and Krishna enters through his expansion as the Paramatma, or the Super Soul. The Kshaira Vishnu expands to limitless Vishnu form and enters the heart of all human beings, animals, plants and trees, and even the smallest atom. So this is another impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord, and the process of realizing the Paramatma is to meditate. So meditational process, as described in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter. And Arjuna said to Lord Krishna that the process that you are describing seems to be very hard to do or to perform, because one has to sit, find a very secluded place like the forest. One should sit down on a cushion grass. One should end their skin to prevent the snakes approaching you. And then one focuses the eyes at the tip of the nose, and one does the pranaya or the breathing process in order to control the senses. So this is the mechanical way of controlling the senses. While the direct realization of Krishna is the bhakti yoga, the devotional service, wherein when one performs devotional service, automatically all the senses will be controlled. All the senses will be engaged in the service of the Supreme Lord. Before, that simply by eating, by only honoring Krishna Prasad or the food which was offered to the Supreme Lord, the mouth or the tongue, the belly, and the genitals will be controlled. The sexual drives will be controlled. If one smells the flower or the incense of is controlling the one is engaging the smell, the smelling processes of the body. If one looks at the deities, one is controlling the eyes. So the process of devotional service is very powerful. Sorry for that. So the power of devotional service is encompassing all our activities. That is already, if you buy vegetables from a vendor and the vegetables you bought from the vendor, you offered it, you prepared the food, vegetarian food, and you offered to the Supreme Lord, then the vendor will be benefited without him or her knowing it. And the vegetables which were offered, the entity who is inside the vegetable plant is also benefited. And it is said that in performing devotional service, and one is in the level of the first level of devotional service, the present family, relatives, and family connection are all benefited. They will be saved from going to the lower species of life. They will not. They will be saved from going to hell. If you are able to reach the second level of devotional service, you become a Madhyam Bhakta. 7 generations and 7 generations before and after, actually 14 generations, the whole world will be saved, because as we spread this sublime philosophy to the whole world, people will be purified by prasadam, by the books, and this will usher the prophecy of in the scriptures, and it was also stated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that within this Kali Yuga there will be 10,000 years of golden age. So since the appearance of Lord Chaitanya 500 years ago, that so-called golden age the counting of the 10,000 years has started. So we still have 9,500 years before all religious aspect of humanity will be lowest, will become the lowest, wherein religion will be mostly absent after the 10,000 years. So because of this Hare Krishna movement, I think the lowest that this Kali Yuga has approached is during the 1960s. It's during the 1960s when the different drugs, LSD, began with marijuana, LSD, and so many things. Then there were Buddhist colony, and then there was everything is dirty. If you see Manila during the 1960s, garbage is everywhere. The whole city is the whole garbage thing because discipline is nowhere to find. Everyone, if I eat a candy, piece of candy with a wrapper, everyone is just throwing everywhere. That's the condition during the 1960s. So, although the war and calamities are there, after the Srila Prabhupada has started this movement, then everything is becoming quite better. The sense of truth has been going down since then, but actually because we are espousing truth, then the truth is the only pillar that is left at the start of Kali Yuga. Because the sense of mercifulness is not there. 99.99% of the population are reasons for killing innocent animals for food. Second, everyone is speculating and gambling. Third, everyone is committing illicit sex. The sanctity of the so-called sanctity of marriage is already broken. So those who are committing adultery or fornication or sex outside of marriage, the future birth will be in the dogs and cats. That's why Srila Prabhupada said this society is the society of dogs and cats. Because all human beings are doing illicit sex, almost majority. Everyone is divorcing. Almost everyone is divorcing. Right now in the States, the process of killing the fetus inside the body is there. The politicians are fighting for guns or no guns. So that's how Kali Yuga has progressed. But even though there is war in Ukraine and Russia, there are so many devotees in, what's the capital of Russia? Ukraine? Kiev. The Russians failed to really go to Kiev. Why? Because there are around 10,000 devotees in Kiev. So you can see the Russians failed to invade Kiev because there are devotees there. So where there are devotees, Krishna will be there to protect the devotees. Krishna said in Bhagavad Gita, hear this Arjuna that my devotee never perishes, it's never conquered. So let us continue doing devotional service, because by doing so we become very, very dear to the Supreme Lord. So by engaging in devotional service, it is imperishable. It says here, devotional service, this imperishable path of devotional service. What do you mean by imperishable? When one performs devotional service, nothing is lost. For example, you did already 10% and then you stop. You fell down, you transgressed the four legality principles. You ate meat, you drank wine, everything. But then that 10% is there. Krishna said that a little advancement in this path will protect you from the greatest danger. Why? Because when you have performed devotional service, you will never forget that feeling. That feeling of peace, that feeling of no fear, you are fearless, that feeling of equanimity inside you, you have felt that. So somehow you felt happiness, and you will never forget that happiness. And when you eventually become bewildered by Maya, and you think that there's happiness in sex, there's still happiness in eating meat, then you fell down. But somehow, due to the fact that you have performed devotional service to a certain extent, you will desire again. You will think that, what am I doing to my life? How can I go back to that level wherein I felt happiness, I felt peace inside me? So the Paramatma, hearing your sincere question and sincere desire to go back to devotional service, then you will be able to start again at 11%. You start at 10%, you will begin with the 11%. The only thing that can erase your devotional service, like 10%, it can become 0, is what? Offenses to the devotees. It can become 0. If you offend devotees. So try not to offend devotees, those who are already chanting Hare Krishna mantra. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that once a person has chanted even once Hare Krishna, one should respect that person as already a devotee. So, avoiding offenses to devotees is that we should refrain from criticizing, from judging others. We should avoid criticism and think that we are so great, that we have attained something. In fact, we are so small in comparison to Mahavishnu, whose body is, when he breathes out, all the universes come out from his body. So meaning, this is not the only universe. We are only a small spark in one universe. So what's the point of being proud? So one of the decoration of the devotee is humility. That's why Lord Chaitanya in his 6th he said, Trinadapi Sumijena Tarorapi Saistana Amanina Manadena Kirtanaya Sudari. So one must consider oneself to be lower than the blade of grass in the streets and tolerant as the tree. Tolerant means we should be able to tolerate or forgive persons who are oppressing us. We must tolerate those people who are giving us the pain in life and problems in life. Forgiveness. So, if one does this, Kirtaniya Sadhani, then one can continuously chant the Hare Krishna mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, devotional service, the greatest practice of devotional service is the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. So don't give up the chanting of the Hare Krishna. It is the most effective way of becoming very, very dear to the Supreme Lord. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama Kevalam, Kalunas Kevalam, and Jataha. There is no other way, no other way, no other way. So, be serious, give your time for chanting the 16 rounds. Before, in the Gaudiya Sampradaya, during the time of Bhaktisiddhanta, the number of rounds required for initiated devotees is 64 rounds. That's around 8 hours a day. When the Americans became devotees, there's so many things to do in the movement. So Srila Prabhupada brought it down to 32 rounds. Still the devotees cannot cope up chanting 4 to 5 hours a day. But then eventually the devotees even complained, and eventually Srila Prabhupada said, okay, last 16 rounds. So that's how it came to the point of we are required to chant a minimum, 16 rounds per day. So we give 2.5 hours. Actually, if you chant together with Srila Prabhupada's chanting, 2 hours you can finish. So just by chanting, you will reach perfection eventually. Very easy. 2.5 hours only. Within 24 hours. 2 hours over 24. 1 over 12. That's less than 10% of our time. So you're only giving 9% of your time. Why can't you give it as a sacrifice? This is Yuga Dharma. So I was hearing the recorded Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto. It said that in one chapter it said that if you do not perform the regulative principles, then you will lose your soul to the lowest species of life. Do you want to become a cat or a dog? It's good if there's a devotee in the family. Then the cat or dog will be offered prasada. But if not, then you have to live the life of a cat and dog. Becoming vegetarian is not the hardest regulative principle to obey. Actually, it's illicit sex. Because the highest enjoyment in human life is sex. If one sees a beautiful or a handsome opposite, you are enamored. But if you are a devotee, you know that it's just a bag of blood, stool, and urine. Then your eyes will be controlled. Those who are not controlled, their eyes is just, their face and the eyes is just looking anywhere for something, for a temporary beauty. So please perform devotional service. We are considered personalists because we consider the Supreme God as Bhagavan, one who possesses 6 opulences to the max, and it is only by a personal association with the Supreme Lord that we attain bhakti or love of God. So, chant Hare Krishna, look at the deities, the beautiful deities, so that our eyes will remember the form of the Supreme Lord, the beautiful deities. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Any question?
In the explanation today, you mentioned a very interesting fact about the transcendentalists, and they view the Supreme Lord as a form of light, and they wish to merge with it. And you also said that it's regarded as spiritual suicide. And I was just wondering, is there such a thing as the soul which just takes on various different forms of bodies? Is there such a thing as
Srila Prabhupada termed it as spiritual suicide. Wherein you deny your... So you have to go down again. When you are inside the light, and eventually you realize that this is not the real state. Then at that time you go down. But you will be born in a higher family. Because you are already liberated actually. You are liberated from the cycle of death, birth, disease, and old age. But then because you have not attained the highest goal, then you have to go back. so that you can perform. That's why in one of the verses of this chapter, Krishna said that the process is tedious, and you really have to eventually surrender to Krishna. Unless there is surrender, then you are in the impersonal level. But in the purport of Srila Prabhupada, he said here, in the purport, that the impersonal realization or impersonal process is important, not until you have met or associated with a pure devotee, wherein you can, by association, you can realize the importance of devotional service. So it's not that impersonalism is totally zero in terms of benefits. It is important because you are not yet in the path of devotional service. So you are in the personal process, you are still trying to acquire knowledge between spirit and matter. You are still trying to control your senses. But in devotional service, automatically all your senses will be engaged. So one who mops the floor of the temple is, the benefit is not lower than the brahmana who is doing like that. In devotional service, all the engagement are, Srila Prabhupada said that they are all in the same level. So one who distributes books, one who distributes